Hello everyone, I'm Bill. Welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be a video on war magic and the divine spells of 4th level. What divine spells are useful for warfare combat as they are already built, and what we can take and tweak in ways that if you gave them to an army would devastate a military of medieval setting battle, war. So let's dive in. We're going to start with the cleric spells like we always do, and then after I do all the 4th level cleric spells, we'll go and review all the druid spells. So the first spell on the list is Airwalk. Subject treads on air as if solid. This is an individual target if I remember correctly, or every so many caster levels you can add a target. Every time I remember using it, we cast it on the big guy and had it just carry all of us. So individually, this is not a good spell. That said, you put it on somebody that's big and have them carry something way up high and walk over to a enemy's fortification, they can just start dropping stuff on them. So they'd be a one-man bombing party, which could be a very entertaining way to use this. Now, if you give this as a one-use item to a good chunk of your military, the walls mean nothing now. They can come through the air. If you do it at night, things that don't have night vision or low light vision won't even see you coming until it's too late, especially if you do it on a new moon. Chaos Hammer. Harms and slows lawful creatures. That would not be very useful unless it's a big area and you're fighting mostly outsiders, because that's when it benefits you more. Or you're fighting a bunch of paladins, because that would benefit you a lot. But let's look that one up to see if it affects more than just one or two things. Chaos Hammer. Medium range, so it's for a military that's close range, because it's 100 feet plus 10 feet per level. So you're almost within melee range within a turn or two. It's a 20-foot radius burst, so it's a 40-foot area, so it's a good amount of things. So chaotic creatures are immune to this. Only lawful and neutral creatures are affected by this. And it does like up to 5d8 damage to lawful creatures. And does half the damage to neutral. So that could be useful because that could take out a section of army real quick, especially in a regular medieval setting where most of the soldiers aren't going to have more than a couple of hit dice, and those would be your experienced veteran soldiers. So control water, raises or lowers bodies of water. That could help you get rid of rivers in your way, raise or lower rivers to make them harder to pass by, creeks, so on and so forth. That could be very useful, especially if you wait for your enemy force to start to try to come down it and then you raise it up real high. Or your enemy force is coming at you with boats and then you just lower it to where they have to walk across the mud and get slowed down by the riverbed. So that could be very useful. Cure critical wounds isn't that great unless you can give them as one-use items to your party or army, I mean. So if they had a bunch of one-use items, that would work. Or if you had an army of clerics with wands of cures, critical wounds, they could heal your high hit point creatures, your high hit point soldiers, 4d8 by burning a charge. So that's how I would go about utilizing that to help you. Death Ward grants bonuses against death spells and negative energy. Not going to be that great unless you're fighting a lot of undead, but that would only help protect against the negative energy part. Dimensional Anchor bars extra dimensional movement. That'll be great if you want to prevent an area or a creature from being able to go to and from a dimension. That would help you isolate something. That would have been useful to my party because they've been fighting ethereal marauders, which shift over from the ethereal plane, attack, and then go back. So if they could cast that on an ethereal marauder, they would get a better advantage against it than otherwise trying to hit it when it's on the material plane. Discern lies. Discern lies reveals deliberate falsehood, so that's great if you're trying to interrogate somebody, but on a large military scale, it's not going to do much unless you're gathering information for your military. Dismissal forces a creature to return to its native plane. That is great when you're dealing with a bunch of summoned creatures. When we were looking at 3rd level spells, you could start summoning elementals with the summon monster spell. If the battlefield all of a sudden has a bunch of elementals arrive that can now, say, meld with the ground, grab people, pull them down, air elementals try to do whirlwind, so on and so forth. If there's a bunch of those coming in, then you could just use dismissal to force them away. Now let's see if this is a single target or a multiple target area. Dismissal. 1 creature. So you can only, with dismissal, dismiss 1 creature. So you'd pick the most damaging or devastating creature that's out there and use dismissal on it. So it's not going to be great for if you're fighting a whole bunch of these things. But that's the downside to it. So if you wanted to put this on an item, like a wand, it would be okay. It would be more useful that way. Or if you wanted to give 1 out of every 5 soldiers a like sling bullet of dismissal or something that they could hit a target with, that's extra planar that would disappear. That would cut the cost of the item down too, because it's a single use. Divination. That could be great for gathering information in a wartime setting. Divine Power. If that's a single target, that wouldn't be that beneficial. But if it's not, that could be very beneficial. Personal U, 1 round per level. So if you could get Divine Power to be given out to your soldiers as individual 1-use items, that would last about a minute. Then they would gain 1 hit point, so they gain 10 hit points for that. It's lasted about a minute, or you need to be 7th level for 4th level spells, so 7 hit points for that, and they'd gain a small attack bonus with Divine Power. Freedom of movement. Subject moves normally despite impediments to movement. If you're running through rough terrain, if you got things that are entangling you, freedom of movement could be good for that stuff. So 1-use item for that for your soldiers would be very beneficial. But I wouldn't put my stakes in that as much. Only looking at it with how I've looked at the other stuff. But it could still be very useful. So then again, just put it in 1-use item. Give it to a handful of your soldiers. Maybe not your whole military can benefit from it. But I'd definitely give it to your strike force, whatever's going to do the major hit. So idea of your strike force would be your actual party members, your actual players, going in to do something inside, either behind enemy lines, inside the castle, so on and so forth. Giant vermin. Turn centipedes, scorpions, or spiders into giant vermin. Let's see how many that affects. That by itself is already good. Let's see how many that affects. Giant vermin. You turn a number of normal size centipede, scorpions, or spiders into their giant counterparts. Duration for 1 minute per level. Target 1 or more vermin. They have to be within 30 feet. So if you provide the vermin as your military thing, get a clay jug, have a couple of scorpions in it, or a couple of spiders in it, or some centipedes. Put a 1-use casting of this on the jug, and then when the jug breaks, as you chuck it at the enemies, the giant vermin appears. That would sow chaos amongst any military ranks that are trying to especially be organized and in shield walls and such. So in the first level's 9th level for this, so at that you get 3 centipedes, one scorpion, or 2 spiders. So you get more centipedes than the others, but the others are more potent. The next level casting of it, you get 1 more centipede, 2 scorpions, 3 spiders. So it all goes up by 1 for each step. So just do the weakest casting and put it on a number of jugs, put a number of vermin in it. A dozen of those breaking in the middle of a military formation would really decimate whatever army you're going up against. Even if the army can manage to destroy them while they're fighting them, your regular forces are marching in against their lines. Next is Holy Smite. Holy Smite would be great if you know your enemies are evil, or they're using evil outsiders or undead. Holy Smite works like Chaos Hammer, so evil's affected and then neutral takes half damage. Good creatures are immune to it. And then outsiders take increased damage, where it's like 5d8 for everyone else. Outsiders would take 10d6. Imbue with spell ability. That'd be good to share your spells with people in a party. Wouldn't be great for military, unless you're transferring a good combat spell like Fireball to somebody. The thing is, though, you lose a spell slot when you do this, so until that spell's cast. So it's not great. You're better off getting a few people that can use read magic and handing them some scrolls that are 3rd level and have them use magic device to cast them. And then you can have them cast Fireball that way. So inflict critical wounds, 1 target, so there's your limit, just like the cure. Could be great if you were targeting something that really needed to be taken out, but you would need to put it on a bunch of 1-use items or give a bunch of 1s to people. Greater magic weapon, not that great for military aspect of casting. Neutralize poison. Neutralize poison would be good if your enemy's using a lot of poisons against you, but then again, it's still a single target. So 1-use item would be good for your strike force, but I wouldn't worry too much about your main force. It's what you got clerics for after the battle. Order's Wrath harms and dazes chaotic creatures. So like Holy Smite, Order's Wrath. Lesser Planar Ally. You exchange services with a 6 hit dice extra planar creature. So that could be useful to get you extra planar help in a battle, but it's a single creature, so if the creature's capable of summoning others, that's even more beneficial. If the creature's decently powerful with like abilities and spells, that'd be even better. Poison, touch deals, so it's a touch, so not going to be great unless you wanted to put that on a bunch of different items as a 1-use poison spell. But at that rate, you're at 4th level spells, single-use item, that's going to be expensive. Your best bet if you wanted to use poisons is just to get regular poisons and apply them to blades or arrowheads or whatnot. Repel vermin. That would be a great to counter the giant vermin spell, but it only keeps them 10 feet away. So if your lines are too big, 10 feet away is not going to help you enough. Restoration restores level and ability score drains. That is useful on the back end of a battle, but only for the clerics being there to actually do it. Spell immunity. You gain immune to 1 spell per 4 levels. You have to know what spells you want to be immune to in that case. So that's a little too limiting to me, even as the spell is for a regular party, it's a little too limiting in my mind to use that a whole lot, because you have to have some awareness of what you want to be immune to. Summon Monster 4 is just as useful as Summon Monster 3, except now you get more smaller elementals, or you get a medium elemental. Tongues can speak and understand any language. That's great for communicating and trying to gather information from enemy forces you've captured, especially if you all don't share the same language. Unholy Blight harms and sickens good creatures, so it's like Holy Smite. It's the opposite version of that. So that can be useful to put devastation in the ranks of a force. So that's all the 4th level cleric spells. Let's get over to the 4th level druid spells. They have Airwalk. Anti-Plant Shell keeps animated plants at bay. I need to look at that because that might help against Entangle. Or it could just be plant creatures. Ten-foot radius centered on you, so it's not going to be a big area. So it's an invisible barrier that moves with you and protects you from attacks against plant creatures or animated plants. But if you force the barrier against creatures that the spell keeps at bay, strains and collapses the field. So, but if you were using it, say, against Entangle, I can see that working against Entangle, keeping Entangle from at least not affecting you within the radius of that spell. So that could be a good counter to Entangle. Blight withers one plant or deals 1d6 level of damage to a plant creature. That could be useful if you're seeing plant creatures in the enemy's military, or if like treants were fighting and stuff, you could use that against them. Command plants. Control water. Cure serious wounds. Dispel magic. Dispel magic can be useful if you have a single magical spell effect affecting an area or a person that you need to harm. But overall, as a military application, unless you're dispelling something that is greatly detrimental to you, it's not going to be that good. Flame Strike smites foes with divine fire. I believe that one is a good one because it's an area spell. Let me look that one up. Because if I remember correctly, my cleric that I had in one game was using that as a fire domain spell. Flame Strike. Cylinder, 10-foot radius, 40-foot highs. Range, 100 feet plus 10 feet per level. So about almost 200 feet by the time you get it. 10-foot radius, so it's a 20-foot area. So yeah, that can destroy a good portion of your enemies. It does 1d6 per level up to 15d6. Yeah, that will do it. That'll do you a lot of your enemies in that 20-foot area are just kind of gone in a war military setting where the foot soldiers themselves don't have more than 5 hit dice on average on the very experienced ones. Freedom of movement, giant vermin, ice storm. Hail deals 5d6 points of damage in a cylinder 40 foot across. So Ice Storm would be real good if you could get a bunch of one-use items. Say you blow this whistle of Ice Storm in this area and it creates this cylinder of Ice Storm at your enemies. You could wait until you're pretty much butt up to shield with the combat, and then blow that whistle and watch a section of your enemies take all this hail and cold damage. Reincarnate brings a dead subject back in a random body. Repel vermin. Rusting grass. Now that can be useful. If you can give that to a bunch of your soldiers and your enemy is better equipped in a mundane sense, like they wear better armor, even if it's not magical, like they wear chainmail, they wear breastplate, so on and so forth, this would give you a big advantage. All you'd have to do is get the rusting grass spell and make a touch attack, and then the whole metal of their outfit, their armor, would just disintegrate. So that big AC bonus they had is now gone. Good way to take out a bunch of knights. Scrying spike stones. Summon Nature's Ally at this point might start becoming useful. Let's look up spike stones and summon Nature's Ally. Medium range, 20 foot, 120-foot square per level. Okay, so by the time you get this, you're 9th level, so 9 squares. Rocky ground, stone floors, and similar surfaces shape themselves into long, sharp points that blend into the background. Spike stones impede progression through an area and deal damage. Anyone moving through moves at half speed. Anyone moving through the area takes 1d8 points of piercing damage for each 5 foot of movement. And then you must make a reflex save or injure your feet and legs, causing you to reduce your speed to half for 24 hours. So not only would that slow down your army initially, it'll slow down your army if they take damage, the military army you're fighting. Excuse me. In addition to that, you would have the little bit of damage it does, which could be devastating if they only have 1 hit dice. But the amount of area you can cover, you could pretty much cover most normal military formations of their shield wall by targeting so many squares in a row. And watching that really slow them down before melee's engaged and really take them out of the combat from just the amount of damage they take, especially the new recruits in that military, or the unexperienced as far as only having 1 hit dice. So summon Nature's Ally 4. Where is the table for that? So 4, you can summon Dire Animals, Medium Elemental. Okay? So you can summon elementals, summon Nature's Ally. That I haven't read in a long time. But the elemental doesn't appear as the 3rd level listing. Oh, it's 2nd level. Okay. That makes sense. So you can summon elementals with this. You could summon like a D4 small elementals with summon monster 4. Or you can summon 1 medium elemental. You could summon like a D2 3rd level summon monster types. Monitor lizards, wolverines, giant crab, crocodiles, cheetahs, boars. So this is about the level where Summon Nature's Ally starts to become very useful. Now, if you wanted to make the earlier spells more useful, put them in one-use items that summon an individual creature and then give a handful of them to somebody. Drop these beads, these dozen beads, 20 beads, 30 beads of Summon Nature's Ally 1. They're all rats or something that are very feral, that'll attack everything around them. Okay, you just chuck that into enemy formation, spell activates, now the enemy has to deal with a bunch of feral rats that are attacking them. That's the only way you can make a lower level Summon Nature's Ally or Summon Monster spell useful before you start seeing elementals on the table. Well, that is all the 4th level divine spells in the core rulebook. So those are my ideas right now. We still have level 5 spells, both Arcane and Divine, and level 6 spells, both Arcane and Divine. And then after that, I might do a couple of videos on how to combine these even more, give more ideas out there. And then I'll also start diving into the other books that have Arcane and Divine spells for Pathfinder and go over them. I don't know if I'll do individual spell levels or if I'll do individual spell levels, both Arcane and Divine, or do all the spells for, say, Arcane in that book and all the spells for Divine in that book. So as I get closer to making those, I'll have a better plan on that. If this was useful, let me know. If you enjoyed this, let me know. If you have ideas on how to use some of these spells more effectively or ways I used them wouldn't work in a way, put them in the comments below. If you have unique ways you would use them, put them in the comments below. I enjoy hearing all this because the more we think about this, the more magic affects warfare in the fantasy medieval setting. Well, until we meet again.